call the meeting to order.
You got to start here.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, Dave. I'm going to call the meeting to order. If we could just rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. Can you hear me okay? Before we start the public comment, for those who may have not read my newsletter, there seems to be a lot of different ideas flying around, and I wanted to just make sure that we are focused on what's really in the document, and I just wanted to read this before we started the public comment. I wrote in my newsletter, I acknowledge the town charter isn't a topic most residents would consider exciting. It is, however, Fairfield's governing document. A final revision will be on the ballot for our residents to vote on in November. I hope that my updates since the commission began its work and the information provided below will give you the tools to make a fully informed decision when voting on the charter. So why did the town create a charter revision commission? There are several reasons why it was necessary. It has been 15 years since the town's last charter revision, and the recommended window to reopen the charter is every 10 years. The Strategic Planning Committee, commissioned under the former administration, released its report that reflected residents favored our town governance being re-examined. In an effort to ensure a fair and transparent charter revision process, I began by hiring special counsel Steve Mednick, who has conducted over 30 municipal charter revisions to assist the bipartisan commission with their work. Every meeting held by the CRC since last fall has been shown live on FairTV and streaming online. All recordings of the meetings have been posted to the commission's website. The CRC held multiple public hearings and an opportunity for public comment during meetings and through email. Attorney Mednick brought in expert panelists on different forms of government, and officials from other Connecticut municipalities joined the meeting to relay their experiences. The commission spent a considerable amount of time listening to all points of view from members of our community and those outside experts who provided alternative points of view. One of the many items that were identified and explored with the guest panelists was that Fairfield is one of only 2 municipalities with a population our size of 62,000 that still has a Board of Selectmen and RTM form of government. Early on, the CRC had endorsed substantial changes to our town governance model. However, in the end, their recommended changes did not alter our current system of government. The final recommendations by the CRC are not as substantive as I thought they could be, but after many months of work, the CRC, a volunteer group of residents, produced a document they believe is in the best interest of our town through honest, transparent dialogue and a lot of consensus building. This was not an easy job, and I thank them for their work on behalf of our community. I do believe the final draft organizes the document in a more understandable manner, especially for those of us who are not attorneys, and provides for an efficient and productive budget process that I believe is more transparent and easier for our public to follow. The final recommended governance changes are a culmination of best practices that retain the town's current form of government while also establishing a framework that allows future government officials to build upon those changes. I have encouraged residents and elected officials throughout this process to watch the meetings in order to have a full understanding of everything the commission heard and the reasoning for their suggested changes. Learning directly from a source is always better than relying on social media posts or personal observations through letters to the editor. The quickest, most objective way to digest the work, and I shared with our residents, was the summary and then the full revised draft of the charter. My hope at the end of this process is that our community will have a modernized, more efficient town charter to assist our elected leaders as they govern on behalf of our Fairfield residents. And then I just posted all the dates of our Board of Selectmen meetings and how to reach the CRC and the Board of Selectmen. And I also provided a copy to the CRC website so that residents could read it. I mean, the bottom line is, I talk to people every day. Obviously, in my position, people call here all the time and email. And to be perfectly honest, it's not a hot topic. The average everyday citizen just isn't really tuned into this sort of thing. They're raising their families, they're working, and they're just not engaged in our town's charter. They just aren't. And I understand that. I mean, before I became an elected official, I didn't even know what that charter was or what it did. All I knew is my town was running and I was happy with what I had. Now, when I was an elected official, I did show up at the charter meetings in 2006 and shared my opinion as a Board of Ed member about the changes to the Board of Ed terms. But other than that, I just don't know if there's any way we could really engage our community in this process, because it's just not something they really care about, because it doesn't impact them. So I just wanted to say that, and I will open it up to public comment. And Brian's going to sneak in. And I'm going to text James Ryan
Is there room
to
for
make
us
it
to
more
comment as the board before we turn it over?
Oh, would you like to?
I would like to just make a follow-up comment, if I may. And I'm going to respectfully push back or disagree with your characterization, because I do think that, I agree that most citizens aren't aware, but I would argue that they should be, because it really does impact them. The way we govern, the way rules are dictated by the way in which the electeds govern does impact. You could argue that everything is political, every decision we make, and we shouldn't be afraid of that, because the way boards and commissions work, the way town departments work, that's all dictated by our town charter. And so I think that it's incumbent on us to encourage people to care, to get them to engage, which is why I was suggesting perhaps through a town-wide survey, a mailing, because again, I do think that we need to be reaching the community to engage. It's not a hot topic, but it should be. So, and I would also just say that any change that we make is potentially substantive, regardless of if it's changing a comma, that can change the way a law is interpreted. So I would just hope that that is the approach in which we as the Board of Selectmen view the comments that are made today and take into consideration, which I know very carefully the commission did. So I appreciate the work that they have done, and it's because of this hard work. They wouldn't be working so hard on something so diligently for 9 months if it didn't matter, or if it only mattered to a select group of people. So it's with that in mind that I'm eagerly awaiting the comments today, and have read the comments that have come in carefully over the past weeks.
Thank you. Tom, do you want to say anything before we open it up? Tom, did you want to say anything?
No, actually, I'm eager to hear from the public.
Very good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom.
Yeah, no, I'm eager to hear from the public.
Very good. All right.
Good evening. My name is Stevescheinberg. I live on Flax Road. Madam First Selectwoman, Select Person Flynn, and Select Person Lefkowitz, I want to thank each and every one of you for your public service. I would also like to thank the chairman and the members of the Charter Revision Commission for your public service. I am first a citizen of Fairfield, and as you all know, for over 6 years, the chairman of the Fairfield Democratic Town Committee. I speak both as a citizen and as chairman. There is no conflict between those positions, because charter reform should be non-political and non-partisan. It should not favor either party. It should be common sense consensus to reform the charter for a better government, a government with checks and balances, accountability, and transparency. The Charter Revision Commission completed its work and submitted the proposed changes to the Board of Selectmen. The process is moving much too fast and needs to slow down. I believe you have until August to decide on the final changes to present to the voters for a referendum. A very positive result of this process is that there is broad consensus of what good government looks like. Democrats, Independents, and Republicans like Bud Morton and Kathy Braun mostly agree on charter revision. Please see their letters. It is not very common when Bud Morton and I agree on things. Here we do. The broad consensus includes leaving the RTM alone. Let the RTM decide how many members they want. At 40 members, that's 1 member for 1,000 voters. It is hard enough for the 4 members to cover a district and represent the people well. We also need an RTM that has access to legal services that is not the town attorney.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I should have announced this at the beginning. Each speaker will be given 3 minutes. I apologize that I
That's
didn't
okay.
do that. And Mr. Bremer's in charge of the timer.
Thank you. On the budget, there is no support for proposed changes to the RTM. There is also no data to support the reduction to 30 as recommended by the Charter Commission. On Monday night, the reasons that were given to change the RTM to 30 were very weak. On the budget, the current process works very well. Leave it alone. We need a professional town administrator, and that is recommended, but I believe, and many people believe, it should be appointed by the Board of Selectmen. The first select person can make the appointment, and then it's approved by the Board of Selectmen. On civility, it is about adherence to Robert's rules. Nothing more than that needs to be added. On the Board of Ed and the contracts, leave the words Board of Ed out of that article. If the Board of Selectmen votes for radical changes to the RTM, the budget process, and other matters, then many voters, including Republicans, Independents, and Democrats, will vote no in November, and all the good changes to the town charter will not be implemented. 3 months ago, Town Attorney Jim Baldwin and I had 2 discussions. Thank you, Jim, for a good dialogue. And I asked Mr. Baldwin to help build a bridge of compromise and consensus so that all people of both parties and independents will advocate for a yes vote, and the revision will be a big success for the town. I also repeated those remarks on June 2nd to the Charter Revision Commission, and that is my message and appeal to you tonight. I ask you to choose a path of consensus and compromise. As a citizen and also the leader of the Fairfield Democrats, I bring an outstretched arm and an olive branch to this board. Madam First Selectwoman, Selectman Tom Flynn, Selectwoman Nancy Lefkowitz, please work together with Nancy. Unite this board for good governmental reform. Unite the town. Then the people of Fairfield are all winners. Thank you very much.
Okay, so I just want to make sure we're going to do 3 minutes. Obviously, most people who have provided public comment have written and provided public comment before, but I gave you a little leeway because I didn't say 3 minutes at the beginning. Is there anyone else who would like to comment? Sure. Sorry.
Can we thank you now so that we don't have to waste time?
I'm sorry, I'm texting James Ryan about how hot it is in here. He wants to know how long we're staying. Sorry. We can't control our own air conditioning in this place. Okay.
It's nice and cool up here.
Is it?
Yeah. Come.
I saw. I got your text, Mr. Kelly. Go ahead.
Okay, that didn't count, right?
No.
All right. Ellen Jacob, I'm on Cedar Road. I have to agree with what's been said about the RTM, and but first I do want to thank everybody who worked on this. The CRC, I loved your special meetings, select people. It really helped. And Brenda, I read your newsletter and I share it, every single one of them. Big help. Okay, I want to say the RTM is the instrument for public engagement. We are a two-way road here. If you reduce the number, I was an RTM member for two terms, and it's the face-to-face, the hand-to-hand, in the neighborhood that brings your neighbors into the government. You hear their complaints, you hear what goes right, what goes wrong, you tell them what's going on. We informed our constituents of town meetings, of important meetings, turning points in governmental decisions where their voices were needed. And that is part of what the RTM does. If you diminish the RTM, that's fewer people you're covering, not just in numbers, but in contact. If I have 4 members on my RTM team and I live here and my colleague lives there and someone else lives there and someone else lives there, we've got all those neighbors that we've brought into the fold. If you have 3 people covering a large district, your chances are very little that you're going to engage that public. And to me, I think that's such a missing part of government today. So I have to say, I really hope you reconsider the reduction of the RTM. I also wanted to say the Public Works Director, I believe you should be able to find an engineer who is a skilled manager. You can find both, and they are around. It'll be harder, but you can do it. And I think it's really important. The Article 6, the constables, I'm not sure whether they have law enforcement capabilities, but I do think they should be elected, not appointed, to avoid possible political influence. And thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm glad you like the newsletter.
I do.
Thank you. Okay, I think what we're going to do is try to piggyback back and forth between public and WebEx. Dave, do we have anybody in the chat?
No.
Oh,
You
so,
might need to invite them.
yes, oh,
Put their name in the chat.
yeah, can anyone who wants to speak put their name in the chat, and then we'll take those in their order.
Maybe in the meantime.
Yeah, maybe take
Okay.
someone else and take someone.
Can somebody want to go while we're trying to get this set up? See, Dave put the air conditioning on.
Hi, everyone. Mara Abercrombie, Penfield Road. I agree with Selectwoman Lefkowitz. I think on an issue that's this important and this complicated, if you present this to voters when they go into the booth in November, for the first time for many of them, you're going to get a very skewed response that is not a true measure of how people feel. I think a town-wide mailing is an excellent idea.
Thank you. Sure. Do we have one in?
Renee Noor.
Renee Noor? Rennie? Riney? Sorry.
Yes, this is Renee Noor. I'm actually calling from Germany, so I'm having a weak internet connection and
Oh, wow.
cannot turn my camera on. I'm sorry. I'm appreciating the opportunity to address you tonight, and I thank the Commission for their hard work on the charter revision process, and I also thank the Board of Selectmen for the opportunity to provide some input. And like my previous speakers, I too agree that keeping the RTMs at 40 members is a wise idea. It reduces the barrier of access because chances are that most residents know personally at least one of the RTM members, and they feel more confident speaking to them about issues that concern them than somebody they really don't know. And regarding constables, I would also recommend to keep those as elected positions versus appointed positions to avoid political touches, if you will. And also in regards to, I think that was addressed, the minority representation has been taken out, so I thank the commission for listening to the public on that. So I do appreciate, again, the opportunity to speak tonight, and I also would like you to consider to maybe take some more time and don't feel this needs to be rushed through. If the commission feels they would benefit from more time, we should give them more time, and rather do a stellar job than just an okay job. Thank you very much. My address, 83 Alberta Street.
Thank you, Riney. And enjoy Germany.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, we'll go back to the public here in the room. Is there anyone else here who wants to share? Hi, Judy. Judy was at those charter meetings in 2006.
And before, I'm sure.
My name is Judy Ewing. I live at 98 Sasko Hill Terrace in Fairfield. And yes, I've been to many, many of these meetings. The first one was in the 70s. I was on the charter revision in 86 and 92, and I went to the meetings in 97 and in 2006. And this was my 2006. It's time to have a new charter because I'm running out of tabs. And this is a point I would like to make about the new charter, which is twice as big as this one, is that there's certain topics we might want to find in the charter. And I think we need a subject index to go along with the all the cross-referencing and so forth. For example, as I mentioned in my comments to you people in writing, if you want to look up the subject of contracts, it's not in the original list. If you look down the list of 100 pages, the other subject might be reapportionment of the voting districts. You can't find it there. You'd have to look through the whole charter or remember where it might be. Board of Education elections, you have to go to Board of Education, which is in Section 6. They send you back to Section 2. There it is. Okay, you can find it. It's referenced, that's good. So I would, and also the town administrator, which is a new idea. It's not listed in the original list at the beginning. So there are certain things that we might want to find out about and might want to tell people about. The other thing is that in the past, the charter has been driven by some burning issues in town. So I guess since 2006, we haven't had a lot of burning issues. But now, of course, we're revising quite a bit, and our charter is twice as big, and it means I'm going to have to memorize the new charter, I guess, because I memorized this one over the years. I have some other comments I'd like to make. Regarding the town administrator, I'll try to be very quick because my time might be running out. I think that the Board of Selectmen should be involved in approving the town administrator. Right now, the charter says that the first selectman should choose the town administrator. I think you people on the Board of Selectmen might want to be involved in that. And the other thing, the reduction of the RTM. When I was on, there were over 50 people on the RTM. That was much too big. I have provided a list of the RTM and Board of Selectmen towns in my little draft that I sent to you. But I also was disturbed at the meeting the other night because they didn't really say why they were going to reduce the numbers. There are reasons for maintaining 40 representatives. These include, because of the 10 districts are very large, I'm not going to be able to finish.
I'll finish it.
Finish that section? I have one more point to make. Okay, thank you. Because the 10 districts are very large, the odds of one knowing 4 reps from your PTA or the place of worship or your neighborhoods are greatly increased. The odds of having a quorum present at committee meetings are even greater. The opportunities to create new committees are a real possibility with a larger RTM. The opportunities for more discussion and more representation for our citizens are greatly increased. And the opportunities for political and civic participation are greatly increased. And that's something in our town that we pride ourselves in, to have lots of volunteer activity. And a lot of people want to be involved in political activity. The last point I'd like to make is that at the April meeting, they talked about an RTM attorney. If the situation was quite right and the RTM wished to have a new attorney, they would want, we're doing it again? Thank you. I know you, Tom. You got a fast finger. Okay. Okay, so if you, in Article 3 RTM, it doesn't say anything about the possibility of the RTM deciding by a majority vote to have its own attorney if there's a conflict, or if they have a special ordinance or something, they need special kind of attorney. I think this has to be stated in the charter, because if it's not, it'll fall by the wayside, and 10 years from now, nobody will have done that. So those are my main points. I had a laundry list for the CRC, but everything didn't get through, so I've kind of scaled it back a little bit. I'm going to sign my name now. Thank you very much for the time. Okay.
Thank you. I gave you deference, Judy, 'cause you've been around a long time, so you know a lot.
I have a lot to say.
Everyone else, stick to your 3 minutes. I like Judy.
Well, thank you. You remember what we said, Brenda? Remember?
You
I saw
gotta go to a lot of long, boring meetings.
to find out what's going on.
Yes.
Right.
But now we have a newsletter.
Well, I'm not on your list, so I
You
guess I
should
better.
be on it. It's very
I'll
informative.
speak to Jen about that.
People learn all kinds of things.
Yeah, people send it to me once in a while. Okay.
Okay. All right, do we have anybody in the chat?
Kate Braun.
Okay, go ahead. Thank you, Bremer.
Thank you. The list.
Here we go.
Can't hear.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, gonna have to hold the phone, I guess. Just a quick question before I started using up my 3 minutes. How long do we have to submit letters? Because I'm gonna give a very short summary, but my letter might be more detailed. And what is the status of this? Maybe you could answer that. I'll go through my 3 minutes now. Okay. So I have basically 4 points. And by the way, thank you for holding this public hearing session, and thank you to the CRC as well. Time frame, RTM size, the clause that mentions mediation and resolution of issues, the budget process, and the DPW head. Those are my topics, and I'll just race through them. I'll start with the time frame, okay? It's a little bit confusing. There is a statute that governs it. My understanding is that the Board of Selectmen, once you get the transmittal, has 45 days. That would end on August 4th, because you received it on the 20th. And then you have 15 days to give your comments or edits to the CRC. Then they have 30 days to respond to you. It seems as though this process might be being truncated too much, and perhaps that could, you could fill up that time and, spend more time on it, because there are some significant changes being proposed. The CRC itself, I understand why it was shortened. They did have an extra 7 months that they didn't use, and I have heard quite a bit of comments about, we ran out of time, and I understand it's better to time all these time frames so you get to an election rather than use the referendum procedure, which is hard to do. But it still could have been either started earlier for this election cycle or started later for the next election cycle. So I don't like, I was on the RTM for 3 years and also on zoning now. We take a lot of time to consider every single word and every single regulation or ordinance that we pass. And I would prefer to have more time spent and flesh out these ideas rather than try to sort of truncate it and speed it along. Regarding the size of the RTM, size matters. I confirm all the comments made by the other speakers. And I just want to give a couple examples. When I was on the RTM, we had all 5 members of the Kings Highway District work really hard. This is on top of the standing committees they're on, and the special and ad hoc committees they're on, and the ordinances they pass, and the budgets, and everything else. They spent a huge amount of time in a month-long 8-30G public hearing, doing research, testifying,
and actually creating a record which enabled our town to succeed in defending a TPZ denial of a really harmful development. That, I don't think would have been possible if we only had 3 members. You simply don't have time. It's a volunteer position. The other example is when the Metro Center cost overrun debacle happened, we formed a special committee headed by Mr. David Becker and did a huge amount of work and research and kind of worked along with the Board of Finance with their audit. And I don't think that would have been able to be done with the amount of investment, you know, the depth and breadth of what we did without having enough people on the RTM. Also, once the RTM was chosen as the form we're using, as opposed to a town council, well, that's the form we're using. The RTMs tend to be bigger. Fairfield has the smallest in all. That can't be my 3 minutes.
It is, Ms. Braun.
Pardon?
It is the 3 minutes, but you're gonna send us your comments in writing, you said? And I would say July 5th would be the date, because we're hoping to, have further discussion and vote on July 5th. So I would, when you asked earlier about the deadline, I would say the July 5th deadline probably makes sense to have it before. And I believe you have written quite a bit to the CRC as well.
Point of clarification, so about process, may I?
Sure.
So July 5th, the Board of Selectmen, sorry, Kathy, the Board of Selectmen will vote and ask any questions on the 5th. Discussion first, then ask questions, and Attorney Mednick referred to this kind of broad.
Edits to send back to the CRC.
So.
I'm confused because the edits are supposed to be done by the Board of Selectmen and sent back to the CRC within 15 days after you finish your hearing process, which itself is allowed to last until August 4th, which is 45 days. But so
Can you clarify?
All right, the town attorney's here, Catherine, so he's gonna chime in. Go ahead, Tom.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, very quickly, the Board of Select Persons makes general recommendations for topics for the CRC to review and consider, and give the CRC guidance on what they would like to be reconsidered. The actual language of those changes is to be drafted by the CRC and then presented again to the Board of Select Persons for final action and approval.
How long does the CRC have to reflect on our recommendations and think about it and draft?
I believe it's either 45 or 65 days from the date of its submission to the Board of Select Persons, but there should be more than enough time. If the last meeting of the Board of Select Persons is on July 5th, then it should go back to the CRC.
They have 45 or 65 days, whatever, and then they bring it back to the Board of Selectmen, and then what's that process?
And then the Board of Selectmen have until, as others have pointed out, August sometime to act on a final proposal, and whether or
That
not.
math doesn't add up, though. That math doesn't add up.
Saying 45 days from the day that the CRC sent it to us.
That's right.
45 days
From the
day
original.
when they sent it to us.
That's correct.
So how much, so basically, the clock starts once they submitted it,
To us.
which was, what day? A week ago.
June 20th sounds right. Yeah.
All right, because I think this will be important in terms of follow-up discussion that people might have, and then the opportunity for the public to weigh in. So the clock started at June 20th, and if you could get back to us, if it's 45 or 65 days, just so we know what we're working with.
Go ahead, Sam.
Just so you know, you have to get your questions to the Secretary of State's office by September 7th, I believe is the date. So then you have to work backwards from there, and that's why those number of days don't necessarily apply, because it's going to be compressed, because you have to get it done by that date. Commissioner Wynn and I sat down and figured out a whole schedule, which unfortunately is the one piece of paper I left on my desk.
That's only if you want to put it on the election. If you want to do a regular referendum, you can use any date, I assume, or there's probably different dates for that.
Right, but the the intent of the commission and myself is to have it on an election ballot where people are actually voting in a regular election.
I would ask, can I make one other point to just conclude my comments? I would ask that if you do keep in some of these more structural changes, that you put them as separate questions so people can decide if there are a lot of streamlined, really good improvements, but structurally, I think that's something that is a different kind of issue.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we'll come back to, in the room. Anybody wants to?
I'm so used to Board of Ed when you have to push it constantly. Hi, everybody. Thank you for holding this meeting, for all the work that you've done thus far. I'm Christine Vitale, 254 Vernon Hill Road. I wrote to you as a resident of the town. I'm here before you today as the chair of the Board of Education. I have a number of concerns with some of the language in this charter, but I'll be specific because I'm conscious of the time. The contract language, I'm asking you to please review that and revisit it. And we consulted with our board attorney. We got some guidance from Shipment. It was sent to Attorney Mednick. I asked if it hasn't been shared with you to please have that information shared. I'm going to read, just for the record, some portions of it. The statutes give the Board of Education extensive authority independent of the town. The powers of the school board are separately set out in statutes. Connecticut General Statute 10-220, for example, describes the basic charge of the Board of Education to maintain good public elementary and secondary schools, implement the educational interests of the state as defined in Connecticut General Statutes 10-4A, and provide such other educational activities as its judgments will serve in the best interest of the school district. When we consider the proposed charter provision described, the contract language, they seem clearly inconsistent with state law. The proposed charter provision would give the town authority to exercise oversight of the Board of Education expenditures by empowering it to approve and conversely to reject proposed contracts the Board of Education would wish to enter into to fulfill its statutory and constitutional duty to implement the interest of the state. Once an appropriation from the town is made, the Board of Education has autonomy over how it expends those funds. Connecticut General Statutes 10-222 expressly provides the money appropriated by any municipality for the maintenance of public schools shall be expended by and in the discretion of the Board of Education, except as provided in this subsection. Any such board may transfer any unexpended or uncontracted for portion of any appropriation for school purposes to any other item of such itemized estimate. As the fiscal year progresses, a Board of Education may reorder its priorities and transfer funds from one line item to another, provided that the total expenditures do not exceed the amount appropriated. In short, the proposed charter provisions described above would intrude directly into the independent authority of the Board of Education to expend funds appropriated as it sees fit to fulfill its statutory responsibility to educate children residing in Fairfield. So I'm coming really before you today, on behalf of the board, very conscious of the changes it put forward in this charter. To Ms. Lefkowitz's point, they do matter because they could impact the day-to-day operations of the school district, and that affects all of our children. So thank you for your consideration.
Madam First Selectwoman?
Yes.
Given Ms. Vitale's position as chairwoman of the Board of Ed and the concerns she just raised, can I just ask for the attorneys to comment on that? Because one of the things we did ask them to do was to make sure that anything that's proposed as a charter revision, in fact, to review our entire charter to make sure that it's in concert with state statutes. So can I just ask for a quick comment, and if they need to follow up separately, that'd be fine with me.
Yeah, I don't know if now is the appropriate time for me to comment, but I have to agree with a great deal of the statements that have been made about the authority to review or approve or deny Board of Ed contracts. But there is an overlap with the town's ability to oversee the purchasing process, which remains intact. And I think that's where the confusion lies, and I agree that the language as currently proposed needs to be looked at, and Attorney Mednick and I will certainly do that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
I'm sorry.
Sharon Pastilli.
Sharon, are you in?
I'm here, thank you.
Sure.
I'm setting my clock.
Bremer's got you, so don't worry.
Okay, so I'm very sorry that I couldn't be there in person. I got hung up at work. I did mean to be there, so sorry that I'm missing the opportunity to see everyone for this important meeting. Sharon Pastilli, I'm RTM District 3, but my comments are on behalf of myself as a citizen, 107 Loda Drive. I've lived in town for 26 years. I'm going to speak on a couple of matters. One of them is the RTM. Keeping it as a 40-member body. The RTM is self-governing and should continue to have the ability to be self-governing. Just as many people spoke out about minority rule as spoke out about keeping the RTM at a 40-member size. So I don't understand why, because of the public outcry that minority rule was dropped and keeping the size of the RTM at 40 was not maintained the way it was. There's been no compelling reason given for why the size should change. And the towns that are cited that have smaller town councils, quote, in quotes, actually, have different forms of government. So it ain't broke. So let's not mess with it and let's leave it the way it should be. We do need 4 members per district in order to be able to keep up with the workload of what goes on, especially when there are, crises within individual neighborhoods, and it keeps enough, feet on the ground in those neighborhoods to provide our town with the, customer service or attention that it deserves, among its neighbors. And then the other comment that I had was about the budget process. This, once again, is if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I understand about the comments about efficiencies, but keeping the budget process the way it is and in the order and cadence that it follows makes sense because these iterations often bring up matters or points of view that may not have been previously discussed, and it really does give us an opportunity to make sure that we deliberate, that we have time to spend taxpayer money in a responsible way. I was also going to comment about the Board of Ed and the up or down votes on contracts. I don't think it's appropriate for the Board of Selectmen to be voting on BOE contracts because the BOE really is accountable to the state and the Board of Selectmen is accountable to the town. But, Ms. Vitale brought this up and certainly I'm, stand behind her comments. I just wanted to thank everybody for all the work that they've been putting in because I know it's an arduous process and I have 2 seconds left. I'm done. Thank you.
Wow, that was good. Well done. Okay. Thank you, Sharon. Okay, I'm going to come back to the room. Is there anybody who would like to provide comment?
Oopsie. Okay. This is, yep, okay. Okay, Jessica Gerber, 25 Shady Hill Road. I've been a Board of Ed member for almost 11 years. But just to be clear, I'm not speaking in any official capacity, simply as a 26-year resident of Fairfield. For many years, before I was on the Board of Education, I followed closely issues related to it as a parent, PTA member, and PTA board member. I recall at numerous times hearing Board of Ed members, some of whom continue to serve in town government now, voice concerns about what they viewed as overreach by the then first selectman in regarding his dealings with the Board of Ed and issues related specifically to Fairfield Public Schools, whether it was redistricting, facilities concerns, or an MOU regarding the town and Board of Ed budgets. I believed at the time that those concerns were valid, and I continue to believe that there shouldn't be overreach. Procedurally, I'm concerned about how and when these changes in the charter related to the Board of Ed came about. I did follow the Charter Commission meetings very closely, and I do not recall any substantive discussion taking place on this topic. I'm not sure who initiated these changes and why, and to the best of my knowledge, I don't believe that the superintendent, the Board of Ed chair, or anyone on the board was consulted about these changes or even notified of them, nor was the board's legal counsel, on behalf of the board, consulted regarding any legal repercussions from these changes. I would hope that such conversations would take place in the interest of transparency and in the interest of ensuring that the work and the purview of the Board of Ed remains within the work and the purview of the Board of Ed. And just on a side note, thank you so much for having this meeting in person. I hope that this is a sign of things to come. I think it's really good to have in-person meetings. I wish we'd had more regarding this important topic. I think you may have had more interest if more people had been able to attend in person. So thank you for that. Got to go home, cook dinner now.
Thanks, Jess. Is there anybody in the? Bill Hoff? Bill? Bill?
Yes, can you hear me?
Sure.
Okay, good. So I wanted to first say that I'm in favor of keeping the RTM at 40. But my primary point is that it feels to me like the process of working out charter revision is being done after the commission and in public, which is not bad as in public, but what I feel is the makeup of the commission, I don't feel represented enough people in town. And what I'm saying is, I'm a person who's been active in Democratic politics since 2014, and I know only one of the Democrats on the commission, and that is not to impugn or feel that the other two people didn't work hard, but I don't know them, and I'm not sure that I think it would have benefited the commission if they were more mainstream, I guess, in Democratic politics, so that the result would be closer to what would be approvable by the population. Witness what happened when there was a large, over 30 people spoke about minority representation, and that's not a good thing as a result of a commission working on something. And I think a lot of the I don't want to call it conflict, a lot of the comment that's happening right now is because the makeup of the commission didn't represent the town as a whole. That's my primary comment. And thanks for your time, and I really, really want to make sure say that I appreciate the work that everybody did, because I do volunteer work in town myself, not just political, and so I want to make sure that it's not that I didn't appreciate their work. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. And I just want to say for the record, the commission consisted of 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats, and 2 unaffiliates. I didn't know them all either before, or very well. Some, but not all.
Yeah, it's not correct. It's 3, and 1 unaffiliated.
Okay, 3 and 1 unaffiliate. Sorry, I misspoke. Is there anybody in the room who would like to?
I was about to hold again, too. Good evening. Thank you, everyone, for the opportunity to speak to today. My name's Jenn Jacobson of 40 Victoria Court. This was not going to be my comment this evening, but now this matter has taken precedence to what I was actually going to speak to, which is typically technical in nature. I would like to point to the backup of the meeting this evening and to the commission, specifically the red line version, and state for the record that the red line version that's been presented to the public is not a complete and accurate reconciliation of the changes that has been sent to this body for their approval. Neither was it so to the commission when it voted on this draft on June 13th. As an example, the language pertaining to the contracts per BOE in the general statutes and in our current charter is not shown as a strike-through in the document transmitted to this body. Despite the red line version showing strike-throughs of other language changes from the current charter to the proposed charter, the except as authorized by or on behalf of the Board of Education in our current charter has simply disappeared. Perhaps if all strike-through had been provided to both the Commission and the Board of Selectmen, it would have invoked a due diligence discussion. This change has simply been coded as a modification with no legal citation, and this is far more than any modification. I don't really have time to go into here all of the ramifications of this issue, but just as one example, neither the Board of Selectmen nor the town attorney is a federally enumerated exception to non-disclosure of federal and state law pertaining to our students. A previous comment by Attorney Mednick on Monday on redaction is an insufficient remedy to cure this matter. This same issue on contracts pertains to the budget estimate language you have, and in separate but similar vein for the purchasing authority, which I know is already existing. The charter doesn't grant or remove any authority of the BOE, and nor can it, and if it did, it would simply be null and void. At the end of the day, no local Board of Education be caused through its charter to be delayed or disrupted in its day-to-day operations or services to our kids. If anyone had bothered to connect to the superintendent or our office, then maybe we could have reconciled this issue prior to this evening. But I'm going to suggest to this Board of Selectmen and implore you to send this back and to provide the public with a full and accurate accounting of all the changes in the red line version so that they can be adequately informed when they vote on this. I'm going to speak to page 2, section C5, to strike the new language and reinsert our existing language on the exemption. Page 32, 1A, strike including the Board of Ed. Page 37, strike including the Board of Ed. And as to Mr. Baldwin's reply to Selectman Flynn's question, please, Mr. Flynn, you can check 10-228. We are not subject to purchasing through the authority or any agent thereof. Thank you very much.
We have anybody?
Karen Wackerman.
Karen? Can't hear you, Karen. You're on mute.
Thank you. Good evening. Karen Wackerman, 192 Shoreham Village Drive, and I'm also a member of the RTM. So I had a few comments. One is that I wanted to add my voice to the unanimous chorus of public opinion about the RTM membership. There really has been no justification for the reduction. It doesn't make sense given what other RTMs look like in the state, and I strongly urge the Board of Selectmen to reject the reduction and keep it at 40. I'm concerned, I share Mr. Flynn's concern that he expressed on Monday with the provision about the first select person being able to resolve differences among the boards and commissions. I could see that if it's about the staff departments, but for elected boards and commissions and RTM, there shouldn't be a person resolving any differences. So I strongly object to that and hope that changes. Provision requiring cooperation, I think, is obviously important that everybody cooperate with each other, but I'm not sure how that will be defined or where that could lead. Does that mean if one board disagrees with another board, they're not cooperating? I don't really know if that's clear, and I'm skeptical about that. I also wanted to ask that the town administrator position have to be affirmed by the Board of Selectmen. That should think the goal that the commission talked about was to make this a professional position, not a political position, and maybe something that a person could stay on no matter who the first select person is. And I think the more we can have that be an open process and have the Board of Selectmen approve the choice, the better it will be for the town. I want to thank the commission. I know that they worked very hard. I share the concern about how quickly this is being scheduled, and I don't think that's really necessary, and there are enough concerns that more time might be good. And I also share Ms. Jacobson's concern about the redlining. I know there were some provisions that were not redlined, including one about the RTM moderator, where language was removed that had said the moderator was to be chosen from the membership of the RTM. And it doesn't say that anymore. It may have just been an oversight, but that wasn't redlined. It wasn't possible to see that was a change without researching that. So thank you for your time and for all your work.
Thank you, Karen. Okay. Anybody in the room would like?
I'm going to thank everyone on my way up, so I don't use them. I know
Tom's finger. What they said, Tom's pointer.
I'm sure he's fair. Okay, I'm going to start now. Growing up in Philadelphia, in the suburbs, I had a neighbor who gardened, and they spent so many hours working on their yard, moving around mounds of dirt, planting and pruning, and yet their yard still looked like it didn't look good. So we'd still, we'd wave to them and say, it looks great, because they put in so many hours of work, but, little white lies, it doesn't hurt anyone. In Fairfield, I have a neighbor that also works really hard in their garden, and it looks fantastic. What's the difference? They work smarter, they use good judgment, and they are very, very organized. The many hours CRC members spent on this draft is a real sacrifice that many in our town would never be inclined or able to make. But this is our town charter, our constitution, and it is too important for little white lies. So I'm going to be blunt. It's not personal. The bottom line is that this document is riddled with weeds. Every time I and others dig a little deeper, we find more weeds. Some new language that has appeared but never discussed, some established language that disappeared without a red line, some new or revised definition that creates confusion, or worse, exclusion of a body. In your first meeting, Attorney Mednick said that the red line is almost impossible to read. I agree. But then he went on to say, but there's a way to read it, and if people were following the process incrementally throughout the process, you will see at the bottom of each page the derivation of each of the sections. I don't agree. I listened to the meetings, some a second time on FairTV. Shout out to Jerry if he's here. No. I tried to follow the hundreds of pages of incremental drafts. With my background, I believe that if the CRC has lost me, they've lost most people, even some who may have made an earnest attempt. And the footnotes are often not helpful. You should pause, you should table this document. It's important background, but start fresh with our existing charter. Our form of government has been settled, thank you, so you'll no longer be dealing with drafting errata linked to vestiges of multiple iterations that came out of CRC blue-skying exercises. First agree on the pure reorganization of the document, then accept those changes so you won't start working on substance with a draft that is almost completely redlined, just from moving stuff around. Then ensure every change is discussed. Document input from the appropriate people or bodies, for example, the superintendent of schools or the Board of Ed's legal advisor. I'm almost done. Get public input, vote on each change, make sure each change is properly documented in the minutes and properly redlined. And then contrary to what was stated at the last meeting, most of the changes in this draft cannot be found in the minutes. Thank you.
Who's next, Dave? Oh, nobody on web? Is there anybody else in the room who would like to?
Hi, I'm Jill Vergara. I'm a representative for District 7 on the RTM, and I live at 271 Old Post Road. I want to dovetail off of what Representative Gerber mentioned and Board Member Jacobson, Jenn Jacobson, about the red line. That's what I really wanted to talk to you about. And actually, before I get into the substance of what I wanted to discuss, I do want to say that it is great to be in the room. I think it makes it a lot different. I think that we can have engagement and deliberation of ideas and know that we don't hate each other. This is not personal at all. I respect each one of you. I respect all of the work that the CRC did. It was Yemen's work. I can't imagine doing all of the work and all the time that you put into this. But just because I have a difference of opinion, it is not personal. And I followed each step of the way. I considered things that you considered and went along with you and changed my mind on some things, and other things I do disagree with you about. What I wanted to discuss with you is the red line. I'm very detail-oriented. I take it really seriously, what language means as a lawyer. And to convey this to the decision makers, the CRC voting on this, and also to the public and to the Board of Selectmen, I do think it's really important to have an accurate red line. I could not, the red line that was provided was not usable. It was not readable. And when I started comparing it to the charter, to the current charter, I did notice mistakes, things that were either deletions or additions that weren't noted. And I don't infer anything from that other than I think that whoever put together the red line took parts out from, in reorganizing it, made all of the additions, added language, and that disabled the ability to know when there were any deletions or real additions. So I think it's a big problem for us to really understand what's going on here, and it makes people nervous. I just really would like to know exactly what's being changed, and I would want to make sure that the people who were appointed to do this job read this document knowing what the actual additions and deletions were, and that when you made your vote, you really knew what was being changed, and I don't have that sense right now. So I really ask for that to be worked on. Thank you.
Thank you, Jill. Is there anybody now? Anybody else in the room? Hello, Mr. Lee.
Good evening. I'm going to piggyback on Mr. Gerber and say what he said in terms of thanking everybody. I know this has been a lot of work, and I appreciate, having been in town government at one point, how much work it really is. So thank you for that. Let me finish writing this out. So I had a splendid talk, and I'm not going to use it. Oh, sorry, I wrote it down. You can't see that. Kenneth Lee, 71 Rhode Avenue, where I've been since December of 1963. So quite a while. So I have this splendid talk, and I'm not going to use it. At the very beginning, Brenda, you made a really good point that most people in town, say 99% of them, have no idea this is happening, have no idea how it affects them, and will never read it. We're a democracy, and that the whole function of democracy is involving the people, and we have to get the people involved. It seems like this process is very complicated. There's a lot of legal amendment. I've tried to read it, and I couldn't. I just couldn't. And it seems to me there are a couple of things that I'd like to see, or I think would be helpful. First of all, I don't understand the hurry. It took 15 years to get to this point. Why does it have to be done in the next month? Okay. Second of all, I think it would be helpful to send by mail a copy of this thing with a summary and the finished product to people so they have time to read it, question it, understand it, and vote on it from an educated point of view. That's what a democracy does. Okay? I'm concerned because I'm not sure that this document is leading us in the direction of more transparency, more accountability, and more community involvement. And that's what everybody has been asking for. So I really think that that is my primary concern. I have a laundry list of things I don't agree with, but that's not why I'm here. I was in town government, as most of you know. I got out of it because I just did. And now this is twice I've been out of my seat in the last couple of weeks. So obviously it's something I feel passionately about. My daughter will graduate with a history degree. She will be getting her master's in education, and then she was going to teach history. And I want her to be proud of the history we have in this town. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ken. Anybody? Anyone else in the room? Mr. Torrey?
I am Roger O'Torrey. That is spelled A-U-T as in Tom, U-O-R-I. I say that because during the commission meetings, I got confused with the appliance store in Norwalk. No relation. 132 years, Fairfield residents have been voting for 7 constables for their security and legal needs. This was started in 1890. Before then, we had various versions of security forces. Constables sort of came around mid-1800s through the constables in England, Robert Peel and all that stuff. Fairfield had security people practically when they settled here. In fact, this seal, it depicts a town constable checking a beach pass from a resident.
Think so.
Who's to say? So the reason I say this, in Attorney Midnick's PowerPoint, he had item 7 or whatever he said about it, and it was basically, nothing really here, folks, don't look. And this is where the commission stuck the new version of what will be appointed town constables. And it's not just switching 7 people from elected to appointed, it's lowering the numbers to 4, 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats, and even more screw it up, they put staggered terms, so they overlap. You can't get the Board of Ed overlapping terms, but they managed to do overlapping terms for constable. Why, I don't know. There's nothing to have continuality of, we deliver, for like a postman, we just deliver notices to people. That's all there is to it. Doesn't take you too much to learn. If you have it, you have it. If you don't, you're not good at it. And it's not something for a lot of people to see that, oh, I can make a lot of money for that. Because if you're in politics and that's your attitude, you shouldn't be anywhere near politics. So that's why I did it. There's another thing I wanted to get through to you. Town Constable Bill Perugini couldn't be here. He asked me to, he wrote a message to Judge Kate Maxim asking for data to back up the notion that there's not enough work for the constables, and he asked for monthly and yearly counts of how many services were given out and how many were given to each of the 7 constables. Her reply was, we don't keep that we don't have that information, we don't keep it, and there's no way to retract it. Thank you very much. Her reply was also given to Town Attorney Baldwin. It was sent to you on June 10th, the reply, so you may want to look up, see if you got it, and maybe you can enter it into the records. Okay, that's all.
Thank you. Dave, anybody? Is there anyone else?
How does this thing work again? Like just press, okay. All right. My name's Cindy Wapnitsky. I live at 41 Valley View Place. I've been a resident of the town of Fairfield for 36 years. Bill, you said everything that I was going to say. Your garden analogy was spot on, okay? And I just have a couple of comments to make. And if you can provide us with a sound reason to change the RTM from 40 to 30, I would like to hear it or see it, but there has been no reason. It's short-sighted, okay? Secondly, I do think that there should be a town administrator, but also an outside person not appointed by the first select person, because then it does appear to be political, and it's short-sighted, because when the administration changes and it's no longer the first select person change, the party has changed, then the town administrator will change as well, and that does make it completely political. The third thing, this is something that I was not going to address, but now I need to address it. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a technocrat, I don't understand half of what people say. But I am a retired teacher, and I will say something about giving people information. To assume that people know nothing is a very big mistake. And it is also, in my mind, saying, let's keep them ignorant. But I agree with what Nancy Lefkowitz said. We need to send out information to people because it is our job to educate them. And then if they are educated, they make informed decisions. If they are kept in the dark, then they lose their ability to make informed decisions. This town is diverse and is changing, and I would like to give the people of this town the benefit of the doubt that they would appreciate the information, synthesize the information. It is their right to do that, okay? Absolutely. And I just will reiterate, unless you can give us some reason to reduce the RTM, it absolutely should stay the same. It is undemocratic to take away representation. It is absolutely, positively undemocratic. All right.
Next person?
Hello, thank you. My name is Sarah Kitt. I live at 538 Winnipogue Drive. I am also candidate for state representative for the 134th District, but I am speaking today as a citizen and a resident of Fairfield. I want to thank everybody here for all their hard work, but I want to second what Mr. Gerber said about this document being too important to be rushed. As we've heard tonight from many people, the red line draft that is out there is impossible to follow, and if the people in this room who are very involved with town governance can't understand it, how can we expect the electorate? I feel that this committee, the commission, and the Board of Selectmen have a duty to provide the residents with a clear document that provides a rationale for major changes that are being proposed, and an opportunity for the people to voice their opinions before they vote on this. I do not see the need to rush it and just to meet a self-imposed deadline for the November election. Thank you.
Anyone else who would like to comment in the room? Anybody online? No one? All right. Well, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good night. Can I? You're on mute, but I'm pretty sure you said motion to adjourn. Did you?
First of all, I wanted to thank everybody for coming out. Thank you for the comments. I greatly appreciate that. And secondly, I'd make the motion to adjourn.
I will second it. I will second it with also thanks, an extension of thanks to the community for reaching out, and really do encourage everyone that has commented to remind the community, their constituency and their friends and their neighbors, to remind everyone that this process is happening. In some ways, we are our best ambassadors, so look forward to hearing more comments from people. How long do people have to comment by letters?
Well, if we're going to discuss and deliberate and vote on the 5th, I would say then to send any revisions back. And I would like to say, I heard some comments tonight about it being confusing. I personally did not find it confusing. I did take the opportunity to watch all of the meetings, most times after the fact, because I didn't have time when they were happening. I think the red light version was a little hard, but I looked at the footnotes, I looked at the changes, and I understand the reorganization. I understand there are some issues that maybe possibly didn't clerically go through, and we have to update those. And I'm hoping we'll have a productive conversation on the 5th, mostly going through the document and having those discussions exactly where we think there should be modifications to send back to the CRC. I want to have a productive meeting. I'm not inclined, I will say it right now, I'm not inclined to put this off any further. I think we can, we're a Board of Selectmen. This has been going on for 9 months. I've been paying very close attention to it. I see the changes in there, and I think we can make the modifications if we see any issues or problems where we think that the language didn't transfer properly, or if there's some issues with other things. We can have those discussions at the meeting on the 5th and make sure that it's very clear, and then transferred back to the CRC for their work. They are attorneys. We did hire a Charter Revision Commission attorney who does this, who has modified 30 charters throughout the state of Connecticut. So I have confidence in his ability to make sure any changes that we have will be fixed and sent back to the Charter Revision Commission. I have confidence in them. They are sober, smart, educated people who are not trying to pull the wool over anyone's eyes. So I'm hoping we can have a discussion, a productive discussion, because to me, there's just minor changes in this document. Updating our budget process. Obviously, I think the RTM reduction is concerning to some people, but that's I think a philosophical discussion. I think the same argument was made when we reduced it from 50 to 40, and people said it was going to be a lack of representation, and I don't think anybody thinks we had a lack of representation from changing it from 50 to 40, but that's a philosophical discussion. But as far as the technical parts, I want us to knuckle down and look at the technical aspects and make sure we are sending back an appropriate document to the Charter Revision Commission. So the attorney Mednick and Attorney Baldwin, and the chairman is an attorney of the Charter Revision Commission, to make sure that everything is lined up correctly and we're not missing any. Actually, the vice chair is a lawyer too. We got a whole bunch of lawyers, and John Vitale is a lawyer, so we have a lot of lawyers on this commission who I believe you swear oath not to do anything nefarious. So I'm hoping that we can get through this process and ultimately let the voters of Fairfield, not the Board of Selectmen, not elected officials on boards and commissions, but the voters of Fairfield to vote. Absolutely, Mr. Baldwin.
Thank you. There seems to be a misconception that the vote that's scheduled to, and the discussion and presumed vote that's going to happen on July 5th is the end of the process. It is not. This is supposed to be, and by design, is supposed to be a collaborative process with the public now at this statutorily required public hearing, the letters that come in, the comments and suggestions that go back to the CRC, and then the CRC will bring back the document. Nothing prohibits, and Attorney Mednick's not here, and he knows better than I, but nothing in my mind prohibits the Board of Select Persons from going through that process again, should they find it necessary based on public comment, based on new information, or what have you. I think it's just a matter of the 45-day deadline that exists. So I just want to dispel the notion that this is suddenly coming to an end, because it's not. Their final vote has to take place, I believe, within that 45 days. Is that right? I mean, that's where we back it up, and we have the September date and everything. But so there is going to be more time for collaboration, discussion, explanations, which I personally look forward to having with people one-on-one, if that's okay. But this is not the end of the process.
Good. And obviously, I'm assuming all the attorneys on the Charter Revision Commission, Mr. Chairman, are going to make sure that there aren't mistakes or unintended language in the document that are doing something that they're not supposed to be doing.
Yeah, just to clarify, all that's happening is now there's deadlines that say when each of these bodies need to respond to one another. That's all that's happening. It's a calendar saying, you have it for this, now you need to respond to us within this time frame. Then we need to respond back to them. That's all that's going on right now.
I think it would be great, given that, because it makes sense when you say it like that, if we could see it, perhaps as part of the agenda of next week's meeting, just so we can understand the timeline. It would be great to see those dates, so. Because I appreciate that. That's clear. It just would be great to see it.
Oh, I'll do that.
So we have a second on the table.
Oh, sorry. All in favor, thank you.
Aye.
Aye. Well,
Aye.